Hello everyone, welcome to English Tutorials. In today's class, we will discuss P.B. Shelley's Ozymandias, a sonnet that has deep significance and relevance. But before beginning the explanation, we will know about the poet briefly at first. Then we will explain the poem with its theme and the figures of speech used in the poem. So let's start. But before everything else, let's know something about P.B. Shelley. Percy Bysshe Shelley, 1792-1822, was one of the major English romantic poets. American literary critic Harold Bloom describes him as a superb craftsman, a lyric poet without any rival. Shelley also wrote prose fiction and a quantity of essays on political, social and philosophical issues. Shelley's life was marked by family crisis, ill health and a backlash against his atheism, political views and defiance of social conventions. He went into permanent self-exile in Italy in 1818 and over the next 4 years produced some of the finest poetry of the Romantic period. His second wife, Mary Shelley, was the author of the famous novel Frankenstein. He died in a boating accident in 1822 at the age of only 29. Now let's have a brief idea about the poem itself. Ozymandias is one of the best written sonnets of Shelley. The poem describes a king of Egypt, a pharaoh, Ramesses II, and how his boast, pride and rule came to dust in course of time. The poem also tells us that it is the art and the forms of it have the power to evade the ravaging grasp of time that destroys all. Now we will start reading the poem and explain line by line. Let's start reading the sonnet now. I met a traveler from an antique land who said, "Two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert." The sonnet starts like a storytelling when the poet mentions his encounter with a traveler. The traveler had been to an antique land, an ancient land, and that is Egypt. The traveler told the poet that he had seen two huge legs made of stone standing in the desert without a body. The legs were part of the huge stone-made sculpture, but time has destroyed the body and now only the legs remain in the sand. The image conveys a sense of pity and futility of the pride and honor and the arrogant boasts of a king to portray themselves as the mighty ones who can do anything, who can be immortal. Near them on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things, the hand that mocked them and the heart that fed. The traveler continues. He also saw a huge visage, a face, the head of the statue lying near the legs. The head was half sunk in the sand, but after all these years, the frown and the sneer was apparent on its face. It tells us two things: that the king was extremely proud, arrogant and boastful, who considered himself as the one all-powerful, and therefore he did not rule with humility and love and sympathy. Rather, he ruled with pride, dominating his subjects. But at the same time, the facial expressions also convey that the artist who made this statue was truly a great artist, a great sculptor, who could replicate the character and his emotions perfectly. His art still remains on these lifeless stone-made things. The sculpture's creation, his art, still remains, whereas the king and his kingdom are long gone. The arrogant ruling hand of the king that mocked all and his heart that fed all his subjects are all but lifeless things now. And on these lifeless things still remain the evidences of artistic excellence that truly survived through the ages, though the king and his boast and his arrogance and pride didn't survive. And on the pedestal, these words appear: "My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away." Now the traveler informs the poet as well as the readers whose statue was it. The traveler informs that on the pedestal of the statue, few words were inscribed, and these words proclaim that the pharaoh's name was Ozymandias, and he was the king of kings, meaning the emperor. The King of Kings had a sense of definite pride and arrogance. The inscription asks all who considered themselves as mighty or powerful to look at his accomplishments with awe and despair, as they could not achieve such feats. Nothing beside remains round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sand stretched far away. But sadly, nothing remains now during the course of ravaging time. Time decayed everything, destroyed everything, the king and his kingdom, and all that remains is the huge ruined wreck lying in the infinite sea of time, and bare and lonely in the sea of sand stretched far and wide. Once the powerful king and his accomplishments have all turned to dust, lying in utter neglect as the subject of mockery. Thus time and history destroy everything. Pride, power, arrogance, nothing remain. All is futile, and the thing remains is the art and its creation. Now let's summarize our discussion so far. Ozymandias is first and foremost a metaphor for the ephemeral nature of political power, and in that sense the poem is Shelley's most outstanding political sonnet. Essentially, it is devoted to a single metaphor, the shattered, ruined statue in the desert wasteland with its arrogant, passionate face and monomaniacal inscription, "Look on my works, ye mighty and despair." The once great king's proud boast has been ironically disapproved. Ozymandias' works have crumbled and disappeared. His civilization is gone. All has been turned to dust by the impersonal, indiscriminate, destructive power of history. The ruined statue is now merely a monument to one man's hubris and a powerful statement about the insignificance of human beings to the passage of time. Now let's learn about the figures of speech used in this poem, the most important figures of speech. First one is alliteration. Alliteration is a repetition of a consonant sound or letter at the beginning of a multiple words in a sentence or in a paragraph. There are several instances of alliteration in Ozymandias, including the phrases cold command and boundless and bare. See, in the first phrase cold command, the consonant C is repeated, and in the second phrase boundless and bare, the consonant sound B is repeated. Next one is apostrophe. An apostrophe is a poetic device where the writer addresses an exclamation to a person or thing that isn't present. In Ozymandias, the apostrophe occurs in the inscription on the statue's pedestal. "Look on my works, ye mighty and despair." This isn't being spoken to anyone in particular, just whoever happens to come across the statue. Now let's talk about assonance. Assonance is the repetition of vowel or diphthong sounds in one or more words found close together. It occurs in the phrase "half sunk a shattered visage lies." The short A sound in half and shattered is repeated. The A sound is actually repeated throughout the poem in words like traveler, antique, vast, and even Ozymandias himself. Next one is enjambment. Enjambment is a continuation of a sentence beyond a line break, couplet, or stanza without an expected pause. In Ozymandias, there are numerous examples of enjambment, including "who said, 2 vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert, near them on the sand, and nothing beside remains round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare." In both examples, the line break occurs in the middle of a sentence. So this is it, guys. I hope you have understood the poem and its concept well. If you find it useful, then please give it a like and share it among your friends and relatives. If you want to help English tutorials, then please subscribe and press the bell icon to get notified as soon as a video is uploaded. In the meantime, stay well, be happy, and thanks a lot for watching.